It's Labor Day weekend, and it's time to finish building the last rack for the upstairs portion of the fish barn. Unlike the last few videos of the stand builds, where I just showed the ending, today I'm going to walk through the entire process. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is where we're going to build the stand. So the first order of business is going to be getting these tanks moved out. The plan here is to build a smaller version of the rack that we see here, with 3 20-gallon highs on top and a 40 breeder on the bottom. In addition to the new rack, I want to replace this 37-gallon cube that is home to my Limia perugiae colony. I bought this tank from a local fish store that was getting rid of it, and it has some crazing on the front of it, which makes it difficult to film. So I head up the Petco half-off sale for the 29-gallon to replace this tank with, as well as the 40 breeder for the bottom of the stand. Now that I have all the tanks cleared out, let's go ahead and start building the stand. So I went ahead with my table saw and cut the wood for the stand. To accommodate both of the tank sizes, the stand is going to be 40 inches wide by 24 inches deep. I chose to use 2x6s for the stand since it matches the other stands here in the fish barn. The size of the cuts that I made here are 40 inches for the width, and I cut the sides at 21 inches to account for the width of the 40-inch front pieces. Keep in mind while the wood size says 2x6, the actual size is 1.5 inches by 5.5 inches. So let's assemble the stand. I pre-screwed the 40-inch pieces with two 2.5-inch galvanized deck screws on each side and then screwed them into the sides. Since this is the bottom part of the rack, I went ahead and added supports in the middle. This will hold the 40 breeder since it's only 18 inches wide compared to the 24 inches of the stand. I went ahead and attached them with the same screws. I used the same process for the top rack. I didn't add the middle support sections since I'm placing the 20-gallon highs long ways and the stand will accommodate their 24-inch width with no problems. So I went ahead and started bringing the pieces of the stand into the barn to assemble them. I did a test fitting of the bottom piece, and it fits quite nicely. But we'll go ahead and talk about the piece of plumbing you see here in a little bit. So to assemble the rest of the stand, I cut 4 2x4 24-inch legs and then attached them to the top and bottom using the small pieces of wood that you see here. I do want to stop now and show you one additional factor when building stands. As you can see in the clip here, the leg here is supporting both the front and side pieces of the top. This 2x4 is what supports all the way to the top section. It's important that you have your legs supporting each section of the top, or eventually your screws may fail and could cause your stand to collapse. I now have the stand in position, and if you look towards the back of the stand, you can now see the plumbing for the drain that I relocated to the back part of the stand. For additional support, the stand is screwed into the other 2 stands that are on either side of it. So now that the stand is in position, let's go ahead and switch to prepping tanks. To enable for auto water change, all the tanks in the fish barn are drilled. So now let's tackle the most nerve-wracking part, drilling the tanks. If you want to learn more about drilling tanks, I'll put a card here at the top where you can find a video that explains the entire process. As you can see here, drilling the 29-gallon went without a hitch. The 40 breeder went to plan as well. If you're drilling tanks, always make sure to check to ensure you don't have tanks with tempered glass. Before I paint the tanks, let's install the bulkheads. I just hand tighten them. Before I install them in their final location, I will go ahead and give them a quarter turn with a wrench. So now that the bulkheads are installed, let's go ahead and paint the tanks. In the past I've used a bunch of different methods, but I think I've finally settled on plain old black spray paint. It seems to work pretty well and does a good job in just one coat. If you ever want to remove it, you can remove it pretty easily with just a razor blade. So now that I've got both tanks painted, it's time to call it a night for day 1. Tomorrow will be a lot more fun with getting the tanks installed and setting up the plumbing. I'm definitely happy with how much progress was made here on the first day. So it's the next day now, so let's go ahead and start setting up the tanks. The first order of business is to start with the 20-gallon highs and start getting the plumbing set up. Here I'm prepping the plumbing on the back sides of the tanks so they're easier to install. There isn't a lot of space in the back of the stands, so doing this ahead of time makes it a lot easier for me to finish the plumbing once they're on the stands. As you see here, the tanks are now on the stands. They were all prepared in the same way that you saw with the first tank. Now it's time for one of my least favorite activities, and that's to head underneath the stand and set up the plumbing. I'll go ahead and dive in there and finish that, and then I'll check in with you once I'm done. After some work, I got all the plumbing installed. You can see the plumbing here for the 3 20-gallon highs. I'll pan down a little bit and show you the bottom section. The long piece you see coming off the T-fitting towards the camera will be for the 40 breeder coming from the bottom. This will make it a lot easier to install the 40 breeder once I bring it upstairs. I managed to get the 40 breeder upstairs, and it slid in quite nicely right into the stand. I'll go ahead and put the first coat of paint on the stand, and I'll go ahead and check in with you in a few minutes. The first coat of paint is on, and I also added the lights. They're just LED shop lights that I already had in the barn. I think they'll do quite nicely. So the next part of this project required a trip to the hardware store. I headed to my local Home Depot and picked up some of this gravel. All the gravel that you see in the fish room is this type of gravel. It's been at least a couple of years since I actually had to purchase gravel because I always had gravel available in the fish room. So let's go ahead and start getting this washed up. When I clean the gravel, I really like to have the water going before I drop it in. So that way, the majority of the gravel gets cleaned. This gravel is extremely dirty, so it's important to get it as clean as possible. I'll go ahead and put a card up here for a video showing more about how I clean this gravel and how I've used this gravel in the past. And once I get the gravel cleaned, I'll go ahead and take it upstairs and start putting it in the tanks. Okay, so we're back in the fish barn. As you can see, I have gravel in the 20-gallon tanks. I decided to use sand for the bottom in case I ended up putting in some Lake Tanganyika cichlids. When I bring the water in to fill the tanks, I only want to do it once. So let's go ahead and shift our focus now to the 37-gallon cube project. So as you can see here, I've got a siphon hose going, and I'm starting to drain the 37-gallon cube. I'll go ahead and catch the fish and hold them in a separate container until we can get the new tank set up. So I have the 37-gallon cube tank taken down, the 29-gallon tank brought in, and the gravel put into it. I used some of the tank water to set up a holding tank for the fish, and also to put some water in another container to hold the rocks and wood so that we don't lose the beneficial bacteria. So for now, the only thing to do is bring the water in and fill the tanks. As the tanks are filling up, I got something pretty cool in the mail today. And that was a bunch of plants from the Aquarium Co-op. So let's go ahead and get them out of the box. I ended up with 10 plants total, 6 Cryptlutea, and 4 Java ferns, which is a plant that I need to have more of here in the fish room. And as you can see, all the plants came in really nice, and I'm really happy with the purchase. For the time being, I went ahead and put them in a couple of my open 20-gallon tanks until I'm ready to plant them. So the water's in the tank now, and as you can see, I didn't do a great job cleaning the gravel. Like I said earlier, it's been a couple years since I purchased new gravel, and I forgot how dirty it really was. If you watch the video that I put up in the card, which is a couple years old, I only cleaned small amounts of gravel at a time, and over the years I forgot that fact. To remedy this, I went ahead and put an extra Title 75 filter that I had laying around and started it up on the tank. So let's go ahead and call it a night and visit this in the morning, and hopefully we'll wake up to a much clearer tank. So this is what I came back to the next morning. Definitely better, but needs some more time. I went ahead and changed out the filter floss and decided that I was going to run this a little bit longer. For the other 20-gallon tanks, I decided to completely drain the water and then rewash the gravel again, but in smaller quantities to ensure it was perfectly clean. After putting the gravel back in and refilling the tanks, it looks a lot better now. It's still a little bit cloudy, but that's to be expected, but much better than the brown water we had before. Now it's time to work on a couple of loose ends. The first being adding outlets for the auto water change system. I tend to save a lot of my plumbing parts so that I can use them later, and that's what I did here. I was able to couple together 4 outlets and then prepare them to be installed on the system. Although I already had 3 air valves that I can use for the 20 gallons up top, I needed to add another air valve for the 40 breeder on bottom. So I decided to use this piece of plumbing that already had 2 air valves installed, and then just added a coupling on each side. So here's the final installation of the auto water change outlets. I just run the water to the tanks using the same type of tubing that you would use to install an ice maker on your refrigerator. Here's the final installation of the air valves, and as you can see down here, the sponge filter is running on the bottom 40 breeder. I decided to wait a few more hours, but it's time to get the fish back into the tank. As you can see, the water's still a bit cloudy, so I'm going to continue running the hang-on back filter at least until tomorrow. It's the next morning now, and things are definitely looking a lot better. So I went ahead and took off the hang-on back. Now it's time to put on the finishing touches and start adding the plants. Since this is new gravel, I'm going to go ahead and add some Aquarium Coop root tabs as a fertilizer, since both the Crypt Lutea and the Java Fern are root feeders. My plan is to plant the Java Fern in the back and then put a few of the Crypt Lutea in the front. As I'm planting the tank, I'll go ahead and add the root tabs throughout the gravel. Right there. So this is the final result, and I'm really happy with it. I really like that you can view the rainbow fish, as well as the beautiful males from the Limia perugiae. It's really nice not having to look through that blurry acrylic anymore. The tanks on the rack also cleared up nicely as well. So I went ahead and removed the plants from the pots and rock wool, and went ahead and planted them in the same manner. So this was the final result. I went ahead and added some reef rock that I had laying around. So let's go tank by tank from left to right on the top, and then go to the 40 breeder on the bottom. I hope that you enjoyed the journey setting up this new rack as well as the 29-gallon tank. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I will definitely watch any new gravel that I get in the future a lot better. I'll go ahead and put the original gravel video here if you want to check it out. So with that, stay safe, stay fishy, and I'll catch you on the next video.